George R. R. Martin, like many fantasy writers, makes use of literary archetypes. Martin, however, tends to take these archetypes and turn them on their heads. Martin often strays from the typical portrayals of these archetypes and presents more nuanced interpretations. The first archetype we will discuss here is the hero or heroine. There are three main characters within A Song of Ice and Fire that best fit this archetype: Bran Stark, Jon Snow, and Daenerys Targaryen. Now, I have already discussed in a previous video how Bran fits the mythic structure of the monomyth, and I plan to go into more detail on this in later videos, as well as how this structure will fit with other characters, including Jon and Dany. The hero archetype often possesses supernatural gifts or unusual talents. All three of these characters mentioned fit the archetype so far. Bran and Jon both possess obviously supernatural capabilities, and there is something to be said about Jon Snow's prowess in sword fighting. Daenerys' abilities are more subtle. She seems to have a limited ability to predict the future through prophetic dreams, a thing not unheard of amongst her ancestors, as well as a subtle resistance to heat, indicated by her ability to take scorching hot baths and not be scalded. This seems indicative of her Valyrian bloodline, and the possible experimentation with human-animal hybrids. This brings an entire new understanding to the phrase blood of the dragon. It also appears that it was necessary for Daenerys specifically to facilitate the birth of dragons, as others who have tried in the past have failed miserably. In the case of the heroine, she would often take the role that was typically occupied by a man, which Daenerys does as the leader of a small Khalasar, and a conqueror, and the ruler of a great city. Another element of the archetype includes that the hero or heroine is often raised by foster parents. Both Daenerys and Jon fit this element precisely. He or she is often or becomes an outsider. Often this hero or heroine is spirited away and raised by strangers, only to later return to his home as a stranger himself with new solutions to the kingdom's issues. It seems that Daenerys fits the archetype the best out of our three candidates, although they all fit to some extent. The next archetype we will discuss is the friendly beast archetype. These are creatures who serve or aid the heroine or hero. They are meant to symbolize that nature is on the side of the hero. The dragons and the direwolves clearly fit this archetype. Daenerys' dragons have aided in her journey at every turn, and Bran and Jon have had similar relationships with their wolves. Martin does, however, make a point that these animals have wills of their own. Daenerys' dragons are never fully under her control. The same is true for Jon Snow's wolf. On the surface, Bran would seem to have gained full control over Summer through his exceptional warging abilities, but he is often warned by Jojen that though he may seem to be in control of Summer, the longer he spends within the wolf's skin, the more likely it is that he will lose himself in the process. He could become trapped within Summer, and at that point the wolf would be in control, not him. I think that the reason Martin does this is to demonstrate that though man can work closely in tangent with nature, man can never conquer and fully sway nature to his will. The next archetype is the loyal retainer or retainers. These are the sidekicks, individuals who are somewhat like servants, but also heroic themselves. Their duty is to protect the heroine or hero, reflecting his or her nobility. Though Samwell would be considered a sidekick in a more modern understanding, he does not necessarily fit this archetype. Jorah Mormont, Jojen Reed, and Mira Reed, however, fit it perfectly. Jorah is dedicated to protecting Daenerys, although he spends a huge portion of the first novel betraying her. Martin does this, I believe, in order to bring nuance and depth into the character, and this also forces the reader to never be fully certain of Jorah's allegiance. Although you may strongly consider him to be trustworthy, you can never unsee the fact of his past betrayal. Jojen and Mira protect and guide Bran on his journey north, and fit the archetype of the loyal retainer best out of any characters. The next archetype we will discuss is the wise man or woman. While it can be argued that Jorah Mormont fulfills this role for Jon, he does not fit the archetype nearly as well as Bloodraven or Quaithe. This type of character is normally represented as a kind and wise, older father figure who uses personal knowledge of people and the world to offer guidance in a mystical way. This archetype often impresses upon the hero a sense of who they are and who they might become, thereby acting as a mentor. This archetype may occasionally appear as absent-minded due to a predilection for contemplative pursuits. Bloodraven obviously fits the structure exactly, down to his seemingly absent-minded nature due to his silent venturing into the werewood net. Quaithe, at the end of A Dance with Dragons, implores Daenerys to remember who she is, urging her to move to the next step in her journey since she has stagnated at Meereen. Quaithe appears many times in the books, offering mystical guidance to Daenerys. In typical storytelling, the wise old man archetype is commonly killed, or in some way removed for a time. This allows the hero or heroine to develop on his or her own. Jeor Mormont certainly fits this element of the archetype, if not most of the others. This, however, remains to be seen for Bloodraven and Quaithe. George R. Martin, interestingly, never makes it clear whether or not we should fully trust either Bloodraven or Quaithe. We, as the reader, are meant to understand that anyone can turn out to be villainous, or not to have our hero's best interest in mind. The fact that Bloodraven fits the archetype so well implies to me that Martin may be playing with this structure in order to misdirect the reader, perhaps to later reveal nefarious intentions. The final archetype that we will discuss in this video is the devil figure / creature of nightmare. These can actually be viewed as two separate archetypes. The devil figure is typically evil incarnate. It would offer the hero some prize in exchange for something great, such as the hero's loyalty or servitude. This archetype has yet to make a direct appearance in A Song of Ice and Fire, but I believe that the Great Other, the unseen leader of the White Walkers, will fulfill this role. The creature of nightmare is a monster summoned from the darkest part of human psyche to threaten the lives of the hero or heroine. This creature of nightmare is also often a perversion of the human body. This archetype is represented in the Whites, the undead servants of the others. They are an abomination, a disgrace to natural order. Their very existence implies that something is very off. The central theme of A Song of Ice and Fire is cycles and balance. Things live and things die. The fire of life is constantly extinguished and reignited. The Whites defy this, and therefore fit the archetype well. There are many more archetypes to discuss within A Song of Ice and Fire. This video brushes the surface of them. In part 2, we will discuss the Companion's archetype, the Outcast archetype, and many more found in A Song of Ice and Fire. Discussing these recurring symbols and motifs allows us to understand more about how George R. R. Martin is structuring the story of A Song of Ice and Fire. It allows us to gain insight for the potential outcomes of many of the character plot lines. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the discussion of these literary archetypes, and please feel free to continue the discussion in the comment section below. Also, check out my Patreon and Twitter account. Thank you very much for watching.